happened every year, the town, and obviously it would be up to the town to decide, but that would be something it would want to factor in because it theoretically isn't a recurring source of revenue, and would want to make, I think, probably make a judgment that you may not want to rely on that to build an operating budget.
Right.
Yeah, I think that the Board of Selectmen has traditionally, and the Finance Committee as well, has traditionally been very careful with just that. The Berry Center might be a recent example of that will get some payments.
That's what I had in the back of my mind.
There you go. The payments from the state, but they're one-time revenues that might be better used for capital expenditures or something of that nature, because if we spend it on teacher salaries or on town employee salaries, they wouldn't be there, and we'd find ourselves in the exact same position the next year. But I guess in short, town meeting has the ability to set the budget, and then the selectmen need to only raise the tax rate as much as they need to cover that budget from local receipts, if state aid, recurring state aid, or other recurring receipts are higher than expected. Bob?
Brad is right. The board is clearly in support of one-time funds being fed into our capital expenditures. If you look back over the past 5 years or so, very little has been done in terms of capital improvements. And the reason for it is that the free cash number has been very low. And in some cases, it's been used up for unforeseen issues that have come forward. So those kinds of receipts were not part of the business plan, the operating plan associated with the 3-year override. Those particular receipts are hopefully, as they come in, will be used to fund our capital budget.
We've talked a lot about raising revenues, but I'd also like to talk about the expense side of the budget. What are the selectmen doing to try to control costs on the town side? There's been a lot of information about benefits costs, for example, rising so quickly that they're well outside the bounds of Prop 2.5, and that's what's given us some of the trouble. Are the selectmen trying to address controlling costs?
Yes, we are. And in the short term, the one area that looks to be our biggest opportunity is that of reducing our health care costs. And the town administrator has been asked to look into that in terms of seeing what opportunities we have associated with changing the copay, for example, where both the town and the employee could benefit. Currently, the town pays 70% of the town insurance, and the employees pay 30%. Additionally, there's been word, and perhaps Representative Jones can talk to it a little bit, associated with the legislature based on the governor's urging, looking into ways of utilizing the state insurance program that may be a little further out. But we clearly have an internal program to look at that benefit. In the longer term, we have other employee benefits, retirement, which are all part of our union contracts. And over time, as new contracts are negotiated, we clearly have an eye for looking at ways of reducing that exposure. I believe that the school committee, this past contract, took some steps in that area, in that direction.
Okay, great. I'd like to move on to town administrator at this point. We had spoken with Representative Jones earlier about some relief on the state level through the circuit breaker for senior citizens who might wish to support the override but are concerned about their tax bills. What's available to those on the local level who might need assistance?
The town has established a senior tax assistance program. In the most recent year, we had 64 senior citizens participating in the program. And they work in various town departments and also in the school department, as I understand, providing services. They work on average about 100 hours over the course of the year. And the result of that is providing a discount off of their tax bill of $500. So the residents who do participate in that program, and I should mention that at this time, it is not based upon income. Some of the state programs that are available are based strictly on income. In this instance, the town has not had to resort to that. It may be possible in the future, depending upon the number of individuals who sign up for it, that we may need to look at that. but it does provide a $500 discount off of the individual's real estate tax bill, and we feel that it's a beneficial program. It not only assists individuals who have, with their property taxes, but it also provides an invaluable service to the departments that receive those services.
And there are other programs that they can apply for that I think Representative Jones alluded to, either that are sanctioned through the state, and the town also has an elderly and disabled taxation relief
Yes.
fund that's under the treasurer's purview. Could you talk about that
I
a little bit?
can. Just to reiterate what Representative Jones had mentioned earlier, anyone that may be interested in the program can apply through the Department of Elder Affairs. And the program that's available to residents of town, there are some income restrictions and some restrictions relating to assets, does provide up to $500 per resident as a credit, and that is something that is also available to the citizens of the community.
And all applications are confidential?
Absolutely. All information is held strictly confidential. I did confirm with the treasurer today, and she wanted me to mention that the program is available to residents in town.
Great. There's also been a lot of information on what would happen on the school side of the budget should the override fail, but I think that there are also some implications for general government, and I was wondering if you could describe briefly sort of the biggest areas that you think will be impacted by a non-override budget.
Sure. The budget process, just to take a step back, begins in the fall of every year, and we sit down and we review the revenues, and those revenues are apportioned to both the town and the schools. And in December, just to get to a balanced budget based upon the numbers we had to make $140,000 in cuts, and those were made to departments across the board. Not in any particular percentage basis, but certain programs were eliminated. For example, one of the things that was the library had put forward a proposal to be open on Wednesday evenings. As you know, the library closes at 5 o'clock on Wednesday evenings, and there was a proposal put forward to expand those hours in the evening. And because of the fact that the town couldn't balance its budget, we had to eliminate that program. So it really never received consideration. But we did also enact an across-the-board cut of about 1%. And the larger departments, all departments are affected, but the major departments that will see the most significant cuts of about $62,000 would be the police department, where they would be seeing about a $25,000 reduction, the Department of Public Works, which would be seeing about an $18,000 reduction, and then lastly, the fire department, which would be seeing about an $18,500 reduction. All those funds were necessary to balance the budget. All of the other municipal departments will, to some degree, have additional cuts that will be made, but at this stage, those are the major cuts that we did have to make, and all of those items will influence staffing. Similar to the school department, most of the municipal budgets are comprised of salaries, and so what we'll be looking to do is to reduce salary costs wherever possible to make those cuts become a reality. Other items that we're looking at is the police department had indicated a need for new police cruisers, and it's about $40,000. We had to eliminate at least one of the police cruisers. We also had to cut back on our funding for snow and ice. Snow and ice is one of those accounts that's chronically underfunded. And it seemed like a good decision to increase funding because we run a deficit in that account every year. And in fact, again, to balance the budget, we did have to reduce those costs. So those are just an example of some of the things that we had to cut from the budget in order to balance out going into town meeting.
Mm-hmm. And I guess since snow and ice, whether you have a warm or cool winter, it's always inevitable. It's inevitable, too, that cut will catch up with the town, and you have to pay the piper eventually on that, right? So I guess on that, going forward for fiscal year 2009, should the override fail this year or only the one-year override pass? And I guess that's two separate questions.
Right.
What do you see the impact being on general government? What's going to happen to general government a year from now when we're going through the budget process?
Well, I think that the real driver in the budget is fixed costs. As Mr. Messeri had mentioned earlier, the cost of employee benefits and pensions is a cost that we deduct off the top, which means that when we look at our total revenues, we reduce the amount that we need for fixed cost every year, and then we divide up the remaining dollars between the town and the school. And unfortunately, those remaining dollars will, in the future years, will be less money that will be available. We'll have less money for town services and town programs. And in all reality, what individuals will see is a reduction in municipal services. But keep in mind that the municipal services budget, I believe 5 years ago, had seen some cuts, and those cuts were never restored. Those were cuts that had resulted from an override that was unsuccessful. So I think that it's to be expected that at best we can do is to tread water and hold our own, and but certainly not look to increase or expand any additional municipal services.
And some of the services you referred to, like the Wednesday nights at the library, that was something that was lost when the override failed.
Very
So
true.
it's not a brand-new service. It's still seeking to restore something that has not been able to be restored for 4 or 5 years now. And the streetlights, the same thing. They won't come back.
Right, the streetlights won't come back.
They
and-
won't come back.
And certainly there's a need to have working police cruisers that are operational, and I think it's a given that the town will be replacing those on an annual basis, but unfortunately, when there are critical decisions that need to be made, sometimes those things get deferred, and you maybe go a year longer than you probably should in terms of replacing critical equipment.
And you may pay more in maintenance costs?
Always.
Yep. Okay, great. I'd like to move on to some perspective from the school department now, and I'll start with Jerry Venezia from the school committee. Jerry, if the override fails, can you tell us about what educational services will be lost and of most concern to families and students?
I think the most significant impact is going to be the reduction in staffing. And if the override does not pass, we are going to have to reduce our staffing level by the equivalent of 10 full-time positions. And that's going to be system-wide. The impact is going to be across the board from elementary to middle to high school, but primarily the long-term impact will be at the middle school and the high school. And just as an example, and I don't want to read them all, but we would be reducing elementary art, elementary music, elementary physical education, middle school physical education, middle school art, middle school music. That would be eliminating the International Cultures program that's currently at the middle school. High school physical education would be dramatically reduced. We would also be eliminating an integrated technology specialist at the high school, system-wide. Instrumental music at the elementary school would be reduced dramatically. Would also be having to close the libraries at the middle school and the high school twice a week. In addition to that, in addition to the staffing concerns that we have, we'd also have to reduce our small capital expenditures by about $257,000. And the biggest impact from that is the purchase of textbooks. And those are system-wide textbooks that are badly needed at the, particularly the high school and the middle school level. There's a trickle-down effect to this, too. If we eliminate those programs I just talked about, particularly at the elementary school and the middle school, the kids that are in those programs have to be someplace else. And those programs not only afforded the kids some diversity, particularly at the elementary school, to be able to have art and music and physical education, but it also allowed teachers the right to plan, to do their planning time during those periods. And the planning time is required and mandated by the collective bargaining contract we have with them. So as a result of them not having their planning time at the elementary and the middle school level, we would plan to have early closings on Wednesdays of every week for elementary school and middle school school children, so that the teachers could actually have their planning time in those days. So there's a significant impact. And if the override passes, we plan on adding 8 positions. So the overall impact is about 18 positions. Eight positions if the override passes that we're going to add, 10 positions that we're going to reduce if the override does not pass. So I would say the most significant impact is going to be in class size, the elimination of some programs, and also the problem that we're going to find as far as the planning time resulting in the early release days on Wednesdays.
Some people have asked, why can't teachers just plan after school or before school?
Well, again, I think they do. I think teachers spend significant amounts of time on their own, at home, not being compensated for it. But again, contractually, they are provided with time every day or every week to do planning, and that time would have to be provided by contract.
And the 8 additional positions that you refer
Yes.
to, are those for new programs, or
No,
what are you going to
they're
do
not.
with those folks?
The 8 new positions are essentially, and I think 8's a modest number, 8 positions are essentially to deal with class size, and that's our most significant worry, particularly at the middle school level. For instance, of the 8 positions, 5 of them are at the middle school. because the class size at the middle school now for the core subjects are exceeding 30 students per class. And we've seen a shift